He was a hero to the community until he was found murdered in his garage, face down in a pool of blood. A drifter was blamed, locked away, and forgotten. But 2 years later, an unmarked letter arrived at the police station. Inside it, just 7 words. "You buried the wrong man. Look behind the furnace." What they found next shattered everything they thought they knew. Maplewood, Illinois, wasn't the kind of town where crime lived loudly. It whispered through the cracks of old houses and in rumors passed around the single diners still open after 8 p.m. So when beloved high school teacher Eli Cartwright was found bludgeoned to death in his own garage on a frosty February morning in 2016, the town gasped and then rushed to move on. The case didn't linger in headlines for long. Within weeks, a homeless man named Daniel Price was arrested. His criminal history included petty theft and loitering, and his mental health record didn't win him sympathy. He was seen in the neighborhood days before the murder, allegedly holding a crowbar. It was open and shut, or at least, that's how the Maplewood police framed it. Daniel's public defender did little to challenge the case. The trial was short, the evidence was circumstantial, and the motive was vague. The jury, composed of locals who had once cheered for Eli Cartwright at high school football games, took less than 4 hours to deliberate. Daniel Price was sentenced to life without parole. But then came the letter. It was a plain white envelope, addressed only to Chief. No return address, no fingerprints. Inside was a single typed line. "You buried the wrong man. Look behind the furnace." The note arrived exactly 2 years after Eli's murder. At first, no one took it seriously. Prank, maybe a sick joke. But curiosity, or guilt, nudged Detective Rachel Hines, one of the officers originally assigned to the Cartwright case, to return to the scene. Eli's house had been sold to a new family who, after some persuasion, let Rachel inspect the basement. Behind the old furnace, hidden in the hollow of the brick wall, was a plastic bag. Inside were blood-stained gloves and a ripped note with the initials MD at the bottom. None of it had been logged during the original investigation. Rachel froze. Either someone planted it recently, or something had been missed. Badly. And if the gloves were real evidence, they hadn't belonged to Daniel Price, whose hands had been examined during booking and showed no signs of trauma. The case file, thought to be sealed shut, was now wide open. Over the next month, the police received 3 more letters, each arriving on the same day of the week, each containing clues that only someone close to the crime could possibly know. One read, "Ask the janitor at Washington High why the baseball trophy went missing in 2015. Another simply said, "The screwdriver in the principal's drawer. He'll never admit it was his." The third was the most damning yet. "Blood doesn't wash out of car mats, no matter how hard you try." Whoever was sending these notes wasn't just playing games. They had knowledge. They had motive. And they wanted someone, maybe more than one person, exposed. As pressure mounted, Rachel quietly reopened the investigation, this time without informing the press. She formed a discreet task force. And as they followed the clues left by the mysterious sender, something darker began to surface. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a cover-up, one that the entire town might have been complicit in. Detective Rachel Hines hadn't slept in 36 hours. The anonymous notes had thrown her back into a case she thought was long dead, and now they were turning over stones no one wanted disturbed. She stood in the janitor's supply closet at Washington High School. The harsh scent of ammonia and rubber gloves filled the space, but her attention was on a dusty storage cabinet in the corner. The janitor, Louis Trotter, stood nearby, arms folded tightly, eyes twitching with unease. "Did you or did you not remove the 2015 baseball championship trophy from Mr. Cartwright's office the night of February 11th? She asked. Louis hesitated, licking his dry lips. "Look, it was after hours. I wasn't supposed to be there. But yet, I took it." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Why?" He swallowed hard. "Because someone told me to." "Who?" He looked away. "I don't know." Rachel stared at him. Louis shifted on his feet. "I found a note in my locker. Said to take the trophy and leave it by the dumpster. Said they'd handle the rest. I thought it was a prank." "You didn't report it?" "I didn't think it mattered." Rachel's blood chilled. The 2015 trophy had gone missing the same week Eli Cartwright had confronted a group of senior athletes about vandalism and hazing. That incident had been brushed under the rug. But what if it wasn't unrelated? She left the school with more questions than answers. Back at the station, she reviewed the original crime scene photos, Eli's body, the blood spatter, the position of the crowbar. But what stood out now wasn't what was in the photos, it was what wasn't. The trophy was never mentioned in the original inventory. If it had been used to stage the scene or distract investigators, it might explain the lack of direct physical evidence linking Daniel Price to the killing. Could the trophy have been a decoy? Just as she began reworking her timeline, another letter arrived. Same white envelope, same typewriter font. The principal knew. He lied on the stand. Ask him what happened to the screwdriver. Rachel stormed down to Principal Dennis McCall's office the next morning. His face paled when she placed the envelope in front of him. I don't know what this is, he stammered. I think you do. You testified that Eli Cartwright left your office at 4:30 p.m. the day of his murder. Surveillance footage shows you left the building at 4:12. Why lie about a timeline? Principal McCall adjusted his glasses, sweat beading at his hairline. Rachel leaned forward. We also found a screwdriver in your desk with traces of blood under the handle. That wasn't logged either. Mind explaining that? You correct. I was protecting the school, he whispered. There was too much heat already. Parents were ready to sue. Eli was poking into things that had nothing to do with him. And then he ends up dead. Rachel's heart thundered. He didn't deserve to die, McCall added quickly, but the truth would have destroyed this school. And you let an innocent man take the fall? She barked. McCall didn't respond. His silence was an admission. Later that evening, Rachel sat in her car outside the old community center, holding all 3 letters in her hand. One addressed the janitor, one the principal. The third about the car mat hadn't yet been investigated, but she had a strong feeling it would point to someone else deeply embedded in the community. Whoever was sending these letters wasn't just exposing facts. They were dismantling an entire ecosystem of corruption, one piece at a time. What? And how did they know so much? She didn't know it yet, but the next letter would not come in the mail. It would be hand-delivered, and it would change everything. Detective Hines had barely stepped into the precinct the next morning when the front desk officer called her over with a puzzled look. There's someone here asking for you. Says he has a message, but won't say from who. Rachel's pulse ticked faster. She rounded the corner and found a young man, early 20s, pale, wiry, with sunken eyes and nervous fingers drumming against a manila folder clutched to his chest. You're Detective Hines? He asked. Yes. You are. He didn't answer. He simply extended the folder to her. Rachel opened it slowly. Inside was a single page from the Maple County Correctional Facility visitation log, dated 2 days before Daniel Price's original arrest. The highlighted name? Caleb Dorsey. Rachel's heart stopped. Caleb was one of Eli Cartwright's former students, a quiet, top-of-the-class kid who'd won multiple academic awards but vanished from Maplewood shortly after the trial. What is this? She asked the courier. The man shrugged. He said you'd know. Who's he? But the man was already walking toward the exit. Rachel turned back to the page. Caleb Dorsey had visited Daniel Price 2 days before Daniel allegedly murdered Eli. But Daniel had no listed friends or family. He was a drifter with no ties to Maplewood. Yet Caleb, an honor student with no criminal record, had visited him in jail and signed in using his full legal name. Rachel pulled up Daniel's intake interview and revisited the tape. Back then, the questions were mechanical. Daniel's answers were erratic. He claimed he didn't remember the night of the murder, only that someone gave him something to hold, and that it wasn't supposed to go this far. No one followed up on that statement. Until now. Rachel called the prison. The log was real. Caleb had visited. And what's more, there had been a second, undocumented visit, flagged in a corrections officer's unofficial journal, where Caleb allegedly delivered something wrapped in paper. The officer described Caleb as nervous but controlled, like he was trying not to cry. Rachel ran a check. Caleb Dorsey was living 2 hours north in Chicago under a new name, Caldorian, working at a non-profit for at-risk teens. She grabbed her keys. Caleb didn't answer at first, but when Rachel mentioned the log, his face changed. He invited her inside, closed the door quietly, and sat down. "I knew you'd come eventually," he said. Rachel studied him. "You were the one sending the letters." Caleb stared at the floor. "Yes." "Why?" He hesitated. "Because Daniel didn't kill Mr. Cartwright," he said. "Not alone." Rachel sat across from him. "Who did?" Caleb's voice trembled. "It was supposed to be a scare. A prank. They wanted to teach Mr. Cartwright a lesson for getting their scholarships revoked. The plan was to break into his house, trash his car, maybe threaten him into backing off." "Who's they?" Caleb looked up, eyes glossy. "3 seniors. Athletes. The Golden Boys. Mr. Cartwright found out about their hazing rituals. He was going to expose them. The principal knew. So did the coach. Everyone wanted him silenced, just not dead." Rachel leaned in. "So why Daniel?" "They paid him. Gave him clothes. Tools. Told him it was a job. He didn't understand what he was doing. When it went too far, they left him there, covered in blood." Rachel's jaw clenched. "Why come forward now?" Caleb's hands shook. "'Cause I kept the trophy. I kept the notes. I wrote everything down. And I can't live with it anymore." Rachel stood up. "You're going to give a statement. Today." He nodded. As they left the apartment, Rachel knew this wasn't just a mistake. It was a systematic rot. Protected kids. Silenced teachers. Abandoned scapegoats. But Caleb's confession? It was the key to unlocking it all. Still, one question haunted her. If Caleb had written the first 3 letters, who sent the 4th one? The interview room inside the Maplewood Police Department was small, sterile, and humming with tension. Caleb Dorsey, now officially unmasked as the anonymous tipster, sat across from Detective Rachel Hines, his confession audio recorded, his hands trembling despite the cup of untouched coffee in front of him. He'd agreed to hand over his evidence. And what he brought was damning. Rachel flipped open the worn leather journal he gave her, pages filled with neat, anxious handwriting. Every coded message, every anonymous letter, every player involved in the staged cover-up had been documented in chilling detail. Inside a sealed plastic bag sat the missing 2015 baseball trophy, wrapped in a faded gym towel. Caleb had retrieved it from his late uncle's garage, where it had been hidden for years, along with a blood-stained shirt and a burner phone containing 3 grainy voice memos. One voice was unmistakable, Principal McCall. Another, Coach Everett, head of Maplewood's varsity baseball team. And the third was Eli Cartwright. The memos captured a meeting the week before Eli's murder. The voices discussed a scandal involving hazing rituals, forced silence among students, and Eli's refusal to play along. He wanted to go to the school board. He planned to submit formal evidence. In the last recording, Coach Everett warned, "If Eli takes this public, scholarships are gone. Reputations, done. Maybe we scare him off before he buries us all." Rachel sat back, stunned. They knew. They had planned to intimidate him. But somewhere along the line, that scare tactic became murder. Caleb, his voice shaking, explained further. "They made me watch the planning. I wasn't in the room when it happened, but I saw them come back, laughing. One of them was bleeding. One had blood on his shoe. I never forgot that smell." Rachel asked the names. Tyler Graves, Noah Everett, C.J. Linwood, all former students, all athletes, one the son of the head coach, one now a local sheriff's deputy, one working for a U.S. senator. Rachel knew this wouldn't just be messy, it would be war. She filed the evidence into secure lockup. Warrants would come next. But the case had become bigger than a reopened homicide. This was institutional, political, and the deeper she went, the more corruption she uncovered. Then her phone buzzed. Blocked number. She answered. Robotic voice spoke. "You're close, but you're still not looking at the car." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Who is this?" Dead air. This wasn't Caleb. There was someone else, someone still playing the game. She scrambled back to the Cartwright case file and focused on one overlooked detail, a white Honda Civic seen on a neighbor's security cam the night of the murder. The license plate was blurred. It had never been tied to Daniel Price, or to any of the suspects, but it was parked one street over, hidden just out of frame. She cross-referenced city records, and found it registered to Diana McCall, the principal's daughter. Rachel drove to the address listed, a quiet suburban duplex on the edge of town. The car wasn't there, but the garage was partially open. Inside, buried beneath boxes of old-school records and holiday decorations, was a set of bloodied floor mats, still faintly stained. And beneath those, a black duffel bag. Inside, a scorched gym sweatshirt, torn gloves, and an envelope with a typed label. "Do not open unless she gets too close." Rachel froze. Someone had been preparing for this moment, anticipating it, planning to pull the ripcord if she got too near the truth. Who was the puppet master behind the cover-up? And how far were they willing to go to keep it buried? C.J. Linwood had built a life far removed from his days at Maplewood High. Now a decorated sheriff's deputy in neighboring Hawthorne County, he wore his uniform like armor, and his past like a ghost that only crept in through nightmares. But that past was crashing into his present. Detective Rachel Hines pulled into the Hawthorne Sheriff's Department parking lot with an arrest warrant in hand. Her car's glove compartment still held the bloody gym bag and floor mats recovered from the McCall garage, but it was the voice memo, grainy, distorted, but damning, that brought her here. Rachel entered the building. CJ looked up from his desk. His confident, polished demeanor slipped the moment he saw her badge. "I need to speak with you." "Privately," she said. In the interrogation room, CJ sat rigid, jaw tight. "We have a statement from Caleb Dorsey. He places you, Noah Everett, and Tyler Graves at Eli Cartwright's house the night he was killed." CJ remained silent. Rachel continued, sliding photos across the table, evidence retrieved, voice transcripts, the trophy. "You paid Daniel Price to break in. You made it look like he snapped. Then you let him rot while you joined law enforcement." Still, silence. Rachel leaned closer. "CJ, listen to me. This is your one chance to cooperate. The state will throw everything at you. Perjury, obstruction, conspiracy to commit murder." CJ stared at the photos. Then finally he spoke. He wasn't supposed to die. His voice cracked. "We wanted to scare him. Just rattle him enough to drop the complaint. Coach said we had to protect the family. Eli was too loud, too righteous. He wanted to blow everything up." Rachel listened carefully, watching every twitch in CJ's face. "Noah was the one who hit him." I froze. I didn't even realize what was happening until Eli stopped moving. Rachel asked, "And the blood on your clothes?" He nodded, ashamed. "I tried to check for a pulse. I panicked. We dumped everything. I was supposed to burn the mats, but I couldn't do it. I left them at Diana's. She kept secrets." Rachel pulled out one last piece of evidence, a snapshot of Caleb's journal entry dated the day after the murder. CJ asked if I believed in ghosts. I think he meant guilt. CJ's eyes welled up. "I didn't kill him, detective, but I let it happen. I let them lie." Rachel stood. "You're under arrest for accessory to murder and obstruction of justice." CJ offered no resistance. Back at the precinct, Rachel updated the task force. They now had physical evidence, a whistleblower, and a direct confession implicating the group. But two names still lingered like poison in her mind. Noah Everett, the coach's son, and Tyler Graves, now a legislative aide for a U.S. senator. Both had gone silent. Both had vanished from public view the moment Caleb's confession surfaced. And then the final letter arrived. This time, it was tucked beneath her windshield wiper, typed as always. "You found the puppet, but the strings go higher." Rachel's breath caught. Was there someone else? Someone orchestrating all of it from above? The principal was already being investigated. The coach had resigned. CJ was in custody. But it wasn't over. The phone rang. It was Caleb. "You need to see this," he said, his voice shaking. "There's one more tape. I didn't know it existed. It was in my locker this morning." Rachel knew the final truth was near. But the person behind the last move hadn't spoken yet. And they were about to. The tape was labeled in red ink. "For the one who didn't look away." Caleb's hand trembled as he passed the small cassette to Detective Rachel Hines inside the station. He looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes were raw, his knuckles pale from gripping the recorder all night. "It was in my school locker," he whispered. "The one I haven't used in years." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Someone planted it?" He nodded. "Whoever they are, they knew you were getting close." She took the tape to the evidence room, sealed the door, and inserted it into an old playback deck. As the static cleared, a familiar voice filled the room. "Coach Everett. If you're hearing this, then the whole thing's falling apart. I won't take the fall for those boys. I gave them the talk. I warned them to keep it clean. But it was Tyler who took it too far. Eli pushed too hard, threatened too much. He was going to destroy everything I built. I told Principal McCall we'd handle it. And we did, until blood hit the floor." Rachel sat motionless, listening as the coach shifted into confession mode. CJ froze. Noah ran. Tyler laughed. "I made a decision. I cleaned the scene. I threw Daniel into the fire. I rewrote the timeline. Because protecting the program meant everything." There it was, clear, recorded, undeniable. A full confession. But the tape wasn't over. A second voice came on. Controlled. "None of this happens without him." Rachel leaned in. It was Senator William Graves, Tyler's father. The program was our town's pride. Those boys were golden tickets. I told Everett what to do. Told McCall to bury it. I paid the damn lawyer who botched the defense. And I made sure my son's name never showed up on any record. Rachel's blood ran cold. This wasn't just local corruption. This was political rot, systemic, generational, protected by wealth and influence. The senator's voice lowered. Eli Cartwright was a good man. That was his problem. Good men think truth always wins. But it doesn't, not in towns like ours. The system doesn't fail. It's built like this. Then silence. Rachel sat back, her chest heaving. They had it all now. The final nail. Within 48 hours, news broke across every major network. Arrest warrants were issued for Tyler Graves, Coach Everett, Principal McCall, and, most shockingly, Senator Graves himself. CJ Linwood cooperated and pled guilty to reduced charges. Caleb Dorsey was granted whistleblower protection. Daniel Price's conviction was overturned. After nearly a decade behind bars, he walked free into the waiting arms of a justice system that had finally admitted it had failed him. At Eli Cartwright's gravesite, a memorial was held. Former students, journalists, and dozens of Maplewood residents attended. His sister, Marissa, planted the final sapling of 13, each tree marked with a photo of someone hurt by the lies. Detective Rachel Hines stood nearby, watching in silence. Caleb approached her, holding a small box. "What's this?" she asked. He opened it. Inside was a new cassette, blank. "For the next one who needs to speak," he said. "Sometimes the truth just needs a place to land." Rachel nodded. The story had ended. But the message would echo. In a town that tried to bury the truth, it was a whisper that cracked the silence. Would justice ever have come without that first anonymous note? If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, where truth fights its way out of darkness, hit that subscribe button, share this with someone who believes in justice, and don't forget to leave your thoughts below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant.